So we're starting on our back, feet flat on the mat. We're going to start with some pelvic tilts to kind of warm up the spine and then get ourselves in the proper position. So we're laying here, we're going to tilt the pelvis to imprint the spine. So you're kind of rounding the back to imprint the spine all the way down into the mat. And then we're tilted in the other direction to arch the back and lift the back up off the mat. We're going to do that just a few to each direction, kind of warming up the spine, getting the core ready. And like I said, we're going to use this to get ourselves into the proper position to start our exercises. So we'll arch it one more time. And then once you imprint, I want you to stay there. So you want your back to be nice and flat. There's no space, especially between your lower back and the mat. Your ribs are close. So just take your hands and kind of feel for your ribs. If they're flaring out, you can kind of really feel them, possibly see them. And then there's a space between your lower back. That means your rib cage is expanded and you want it to be close. So you want to knit them together. You should feel the engagement in your core just by doing that. And you want to keep it that way. And sometimes it happens without you realizing it. So you really have to keep yourself in check. Keep the imprint, and from here we're going to start with some pelvic floor engagements, essentially a Kegel. Best way to explain this, or at least that I have found, is imagine you're taking a blueberry down there, you're putting in an elevator, and you're taking the elevator up to your belly button. So it's not going to look like I'm doing anything right now, but we are. So take the belly button, scoop it up, suck it up to that elevator, and then release it. So we'll do that about 10 times. It's just a little Kegel, but it's really important, very effective, very necessary. This is something that you can do throughout the day. You don't have to be laying down. You can be sitting up, standing up. You can do it while you're doing other exercises, squats, lunges, bicep curls, any other core exercises. If you can multitask and kind of do them all at the same time, then try to, because it's very important. So yeah, we'll do about 10. Really focusing on sending it all the way up, and then when you release, you're not resting, you're not just letting your belly go and relaxing your core, you're just releasing. So it's important to know the difference. We'll do one more, and then now we'll start our movement. So keeping this back nice and flat, float the legs up to a tabletop, keep the knees bent at this 90-degree angle, and you're going to start with a single toe tap. So one leg is going to go down, you're going to tap your toes to the mat, lift it up, and switch. And it's important that we're hinging from the hip and not the knee. So it's like you're pushing your knee and your thigh away from you in order to get down to the ground. And you're not hinging from the knee, which basically just changes the angle of the knee, and it's so much easier. So the knee stays at 90, hips move, core is doing the movement along with the hip. And if this feels like it's too much, having both legs up, then start from the ground and go up. So you bring one leg up, bring the foot down, and then alternate. So that'll be an easier modification if you need it. Otherwise, we're here and we're doing 10 to each side. After the 10, we're gonna do double leg. It is gonna be a little bit harder, so modify if you need to and we'll get there. So double leg, keeping the knees at 90, you push both legs away and you lift up. Tapping both toes at the same time, so you don't want it to be one before the other. Now from here, if we need to modify, you just change your range of motion. So you would just maybe go halfway down, 3/4 of the way down, 1/4 of the way down, whatever makes sense to you. Biggest thing to look out for is what your back is doing, making sure it doesn't start to arch. So if it is arching and you just can't help it, then you're just not going to go that low. Your position is much more important than your range of motion. You want to make sure you're doing it right, so you're not compromising your form, because one, you're not going to get much out of it that way, and two, it can be bad for your back. Then why bother getting injured just to have some big old range of motion? So after you do your 10, you're going to stay here. Take a break if you need to. Otherwise, we can keep going. We're going to do single leg extensions. So you're going to have one leg extend out to 45-degree angle, and then we switch, alternating right to left. Couple modifications here. If 45 feels too challenging, go up to a higher angle. If that's still too challenging, do one leg at a time. So bring one foot down to the ground and do one leg 10 times and then switch. Otherwise, you're up, both legs are moving. And if you feel like you want to make it harder, then go to a lower angle. Totally fine. Just again, make sure your back is flat, no space there. So 10 to each side. And then after the 10th, we do double leg. A little harder. Keeping legs together, you extend out and bend in. 10 of these. And same rules apply, sort of. You can't bring your legs down and modify that way, but if you need to make it easier, take the legs up to a higher angle, harder, go down to a lower angle. Check out for your back at all times and just remember to breathe. Try to keep your neck and your shoulders relaxed. So we'll do 10 of those. And then we're gonna take a quick little break, kind of rock out the knees a little bit. And then we're gonna go up to some straight leg work. My hamstrings are very tight, so my legs won't be completely straight. Don't judge me for that, but whatever. So legs go straight up and we scissor. So one leg goes down, we lift up and we switch. Now modification is to have a slight bend in the knee. That will make it slightly easier in the sense it'll take some pressure off of your hip flexors and your lower back. So that is a way to modify. If you feel like you need more help, you can have one leg down and just do one leg at a time. And then another way to modify is to shorten your range of motion. So you can even just go like 2 inches down, half a foot down, whatever makes sense to you, whatever your back allows for. Listen to your body. So we'll do 10 to each side. And then we'll bring both legs up. Here's the hard one, the hardest one. Both legs, so you lower and lift. My range of motion is nowhere near where it was pre-baby, and that's okay, we'll get there. To modify, bend your knees, lift and lower, change your range of motion if you need to. Just make sure that your hip flexors don't start to take over, your back doesn't start to take over, and your neck doesn't start to feel tension. So 10 of these, and after the 10th one, we rest, rock the knees side to side a little bit. And then from here, we're gonna rock and roll ourselves up to seated. We're gonna flip over to hands and knees. And I'm gonna move this just a little bit. We're gonna do some kind of balance challenges here. So you're gonna find your tabletop, wrist under shoulders, knees under hips. We're gonna kind of start how we started in the beginning with this little pelvic tilt. So it's essentially a cat-cow because we wanna find our neutral position. So you're gonna round and then extend. We'll just do that twice in each direction. And after the last extension, we're gonna find neutral. So it's halfway between the two. Your back is flat. There's a slight tug of the tailbone, but just enough to keep your back flat. We're not sinking into our shoulders. We're pressing the ground away from us. And from here, we're gonna go into bird dogs. So opposite arm, opposite leg will reach up. Right arm, left leg, and then we switch. Left arm, right leg, we reach, and we'll alternate side to side. We'll do 5 to each side. And what's important here is to stay as centered as possible because we're kind of redistributing our weight in a strange way. Our body wants to kind of lean from side to side. But the whole point of this exercise is to not do that, so that way our core keeps us centered and then we actually get the benefit of the exercise. So try to stay centered as best as possible. Do one more to each side and then we're gonna add on. So let's now keep the right arm and left leg up. Now we're gonna round the spine and go into a crunch. So we round the back and bring the knee to the elbow, scooping the belly in, and then reach. So we round, look at your belly button, and reach. A few more. We're gonna do 5 here. One more. And then we're gonna switch. So left arm, right leg, we reach out, and then we round. Scoop the belly, knee to elbow, physically touching knee to elbow, making sure that we're not swaying from side to side. One more here, and then we're gonna add on again. So drop the knees and the hands down, and if you need a break for your wrists, if you need to roll them out, then obviously please do. We're gonna go back to the right arm and left leg. So find that extension. From here, trying to keep the back flat. You're gonna open the right arm out to the right, left leg to the left, and then center. Open and close. We're gonna do this 5 times. Trying to stay centered in your trunk. One more here. Keeping the leg lifted, and then switch. Left arm, right leg. So arm goes to the left, leg goes to the right, and then center. Open and close. 5 times total, and then we're gonna kind of combine everything. One more, and then back to center, and then go back to the right arm, left leg. So we're gonna open and close, and once you close, we're gonna round and crunch. We're gonna stay on this side. So we open, close, round, reach. So 5 times to each. And this is a lot on the wrist, so I know it can be annoying if your wrists tend to bother you, but if you don't have like carpal tunnel or arthritis or anything, it's actually very good for your wrist to strengthen. And now we switch. So left arm, right leg, reach out, open, close, round, reach. So arm goes to the left, leg to the right, center, round, reach. Open, close, round, reach. 2 more. Trying to keep the leg lifted so it doesn't drop as it opens. And then after that, drop the hand in the knee and let's come into a quick little child's pose just to stretch. Then we're going to go into some planks. So, a few options for your planks. We're going to be down on the mat. We are going to start with modification, but if you need to modify further, then I'll give you that option. So we're going to be down on our elbows, our forearms. If you prefer to be on your hands, that's fine, but because we're going to be on our knees, you're already kind of making it easier by being on your knees. If you're on your hands, it makes it harder for your wrists, but easier for your core. So you decide. Forearms down, shoulder width apart. We don't clasp our hands together when we do a forearm plank. I don't know why people do. It's not great for your shoulders. Separate them. Knees hip width apart from each other. And we're starting on our knees. And we're not in a tabletop. That's what you just were. This is stupid. You don't want to pop your butt up into the air. You also don't want to sink your hips down to the mat. You want to find that nice little plank, that line from your shoulders to your hips down to your knees. So this is a really good modification to help build up your core strength to be able to get to a full plank. If you feel like you got this and you want to just hold a plank, then tuck your toes and find that plank. Even if you're like, oh, I can do this for 10 to 15 seconds, but then I need to come back down to your knees, great. So see what works for your body, see what you need, modify if you need to. Now we're going to be here for 30 seconds. If you're on your knees and you're like, this is even too hard, then find a bench and come into like a more elevated plank. So something higher off the ground, a chair, a bench, whatever, that's a great modification. Now what happens when we get tired in our plank, especially when our core is a little weak, everything else starts to kind of go downhill. Our form starts to suffer. Our back arches and sinks. We might sink into our shoulders and our chest, and everything just kind of slacks. So you want to make sure you're really focusing on form. Like I said, your hips are lifted, but not popping up to the sky. Your tailbone's tucked a little bit, and you're pressing your breastbone away from the mat. So you're pushing the mat away from you, and you're not sinking into your chest or your shoulders. So after you do 30 seconds, we'll come up out of that, and we're going to come into some side planks. So again, forearm, if you want to be on your hand, totally fine, but we're going to start with the modified version on the knees. So you stack the knees one on top of the other, forearm down, you lift up out of your hips, you can reach your top arm up, hand can be on the mat or your hip, whatever's clever. 30 seconds here. You really want to think of lifting up out through the waist. So you're not just kind of letting everything sink in down to the ground, you're making that oblique work and you're lifting yourself. If you feel like this is nothing and you want more, find your real side plank. So 2 options, you can either have your feet stacked or staggered. Right now mine are staggered. If you choose the staggering, you want to make sure the top foot is in front of the bottom, so that way your hips are properly aligned. Slightly harder variation is stacked, just harder for balance. So hold this for 30 seconds, and then obviously when we're done, we'll go to the other side, and then after we're done with both sides, quick little child's pose just to kind of reset. And we're going to do one last little bit of back extensions, because back work is core work, and then we're done. So we're going to lay down onto the belly, starting small, hands right under the shoulders, elbow hugs the sides. We're going to lift the chest slightly up off the mat, little baby cobra, and then lower. We're just going to do a few. You want to make sure your hands are not pressing into the mat, they're just there. They're not pressing up because this is not a push-up. You want your back to be doing the lifting. Now on this next one, we're going to hold it up, and we're going to lift everything up. So hover the hands and the legs, finding a Superman, and then lower down. We lift everything up, squeezing the elbows tight to your rib cage, widening the collarbones further and further apart every time, and then drawing the shoulder blades together every time. So we'll do about 10 of these. Really think of squeezing the shoulder blades together here. Really, really important. Squeezing the glutes, getting the legs up as high as you can. So it's not just the knees, try to get as much of your thighs up as you can, digging your hip bones into the mat and squeezing your glutes for support. We're gonna do one more. And we're just gonna hold it up, Stay there, maybe lift a little higher, hold it for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and rest. Press back to one quick child's pose, just to balance that extension out with some flexion. Maybe reach over to one side, stretch out your side body, and then the other. And then we're done. Day 1, week 1. That's a good start.